Welcome to Rebel Chaser. My name is Gail, and we have a sentencing in Judge Elmore's court in Wexford, Michigan. I'll let you guys watch.
Folks, good afternoon. We're back on the record for the 28th Circuit Court, but this time we're on the record for Wexford County. We are taking up a case today for sentencing. That case is People of the State of Michigan versus Jessica Marie Carl. This is case number 25-14024 FH. Appearances, please.
Joanna Carey for the people.
Robert Hertel from Ms. Carl, who joins me to my left, Your Honor.
Thank you. Also before the court this afternoon is Mr. Brian Potter, who is the agent from the Michigan Department of Corrections, who has prepared today's pre-sentence investigation report. I have received it, gone over it, and I know I may have only had one or two small corrections. If you'll look at the agent's description of the offense on CFJ 284, page 3, it's a very small error. The stop sign in the second paragraph, it's 39 road, not 37 road. I confirmed that with the police report. Quick look to see if I had any other corrections. All right, I did not. I will note for the record, the court has reviewed the entirety of the report, including the request for crime victims' financial funds. Also, there was a written victim impact statement attached. The court also received from the defendants a mitigation report. I received that, looks like on the 28th, and I read through that as well. And there were several letters attached to that as well. Thank you. Ms. Carey, do the people have any amendments, corrections, or objections to make to the contents of the report?
Thank you. I do have two small corrections on CFJ 145, page 2. The dates, I believe.
Oh, yes, I see the date. Okay. Yeah, we should have through July 31st, not the 30th. So that's going to give us an additional 28 days.
I think that was just a typo.
Or is that just a typo?
I think the days are correct.
Oh, all right, good enough.
According to my math.
I'm going to trust your math. I'm rarely allowed to do math by myself. All right, anything else?
Yes, on page 14 of CFJ 284.
All right, I'm there.
Under substance use, alcohol, it says start date 1975. That was before she was born.
Okay, that's a pretty good catch right there. Do we have a beginning date probably on the front page? That does say 1/7/1975 as well. So, Mr. Hartel, do you have a start date?
After conferring with my client, we believe the start date would have been 1991 when she was 8 years old.
All right, we'll say 91. Thank you very much. Anything else, Ms. Carey?
Not that I saw.
All right. Mr. Hartel, same question.
Your Honor, for the CFJ 145, page 2, my client has asked us to just double check the amount of days if we could. Make sure that does add up to that amount.
All right. Math.
Thank you, Your Honor.
That's correct.
Thank you, Your Honor. To go in order on the PSI, when it comes to CFJ 284, page 1 for the scoring, reviewing with my client, we would ask the court to consider changes to OV 17 and OV 19. On OV 17, I would ask the court to consider that being 5 points instead of 10. The 5 points being for the offender failed to show the degree of care that a person of ordinary prudence in a similar situation would have shown.
Right. Let's take a quick look at offense variable 17 in a second. The difference between 5 and 10. 10 is for wanton or reckless disregard for life and property of another person versus the failure to show the ordinary care in a prudent situation. The court's going to deny that challenge. I find that her conduct was wanton and reckless. She couldn't even tell if there was a stop sign. At one time may have said there neither party had a stop sign, the defendant had a stop sign. Plus she was in a fight on the phone with the boyfriend, and plus there was a comment that he said she made that she was going to end it all. So the court denies that challenge. Next one.
Yes, Your Honor. The other part was scoring. We'd ask the court to consider not scoring OV 19. We do realize this was a no contest case, so it limits us a bit. But my client does not recall asking anyone to lie.
Okay. There were statements in the police report. I did review that. In fact, I went over the scoring myself today over the lunch hour. There were statements made in the police report that she told the boyfriend to lie about how much alcohol she had. She also told police officers that it had been about an hour and a half. However, the boyfriend and his mother said that she had been drinking just before she left. She also said she only had one, but they said she had two. So therefore, the court finds that she was attempting to make false statements. And she even asked them to crush the can so that nobody would know how much was in the cans that was out. The court denies the challenge for offense variable 19. All right, anything else?
Yes, Your Honor. On CFJ 284, page 3, on the first paragraph where it does mention the boyfriend's age that Your Honor just mentioned, we don't necessarily think that's relevant. We know that this will follow her throughout her time in MDOC, including when she applies for parole. We ask for that the age part to be removed.
The court's going to deny that. It's a factual allegation. It's a true factual allegation. And it's also, I think, made relevant by the written statement submitted on behalf of the defendant in her mitigation report about her relationship with her husband, and whether it was rocky, whether they're going to be together, stay together. I think it's important because I'll also note in People's Exhibit number 1, which the court referenced in taking the no contest plea, there were transcripts of the telephone calls between she and I think it's relevant. Thank you. Anything else?
Yes, Your Honor. On CFJ 284, page 14, I know we already corrected the part regarding the alcohol.
Sure.
There's a few other corrections. For the where it said an unknown start date, my client advised me that she both started and ended using it in 2019, and that instead of occasional use, it was only twice.
No, but that's when she had her conviction back in 2019 for possession. I don't know if we have any evidence to challenge that, so we'll go ahead and grant that change. Mr. Potter? Unless we see some other statement in here, but I don't think I see anything else that would contradict that. Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Parkell?
Yes, Your Honor. On that same page for my clients advised me the start date to 2020 was 2021. The end date is accurate, but the frequency at that point was daily. You could update that.
Is underneath substance use treatment. So that is, wait, no, that's not the detox. I'm sorry, that's underneath substance use treatment. The third one down. All right, we'll go ahead and make those changes, Mr. Potter. Sure. All right, got it. All right, anything else, Mr. Parkell?
Yes, Your Honor. A bit further down the same page in the substance use narrative, the last sentence where it mentions the defendant is proud of herself for going to the medical clinic for years and then being able to wean herself off. Although she doesn't dispute the first half of that, she did ask if we could phrase it in a way that shows that she was being weaned off it at the clinic and not just weaning herself off.
All right. We'll say, and then began to wean off. I think that covers it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Anything else?
The only other correction on the same page in health, where it says tuberculosis, she did want to note that it's latent tuberculosis. I do believe that's a relevant distinction.
I did not know that. We'll go ahead and put that down.
No other corrections.
All right, thank you very much. All right, Miss Carey, I anticipate hearing from the victims. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Several.
All right, thank you. Folks, you may approach. I'm going, well, I don't know. Do you have you said the word stubborn. Can you give me an idea? Ms. Brick, how about you?
I'm going to read something they asked me to read from their grandson, Steve's grandson, and then the 3 children and wife Beverly will speak.
All right, we'll have those other 4 people come up right after you're done. They'll all come up at one time and I'll let them each speak at one time. Yes, Ms. Brick.
Steve's last birthday in November, his grandson Hudson baked cookies for him, cooking them a little longer to make them darker and crispy. This is the birthday card letter that accompanied the chocolate chip cookies. Dear Papa, happy birthday. You're the best grandfather a kid could ever ask for. You teach me skills that I can use for the rest of my life, like hunting. And you give me amazing opportunities to have an awesome childhood, like the cabin and the 40. You always support me when I'm having a hard time in life, like when I couldn't decide if I should do football or not. All that and all the other awesome stuff you do makes you an A+, amazing, awesome, super cool grandpa. I hope you enjoy your sweet treat. I made them how you like it. Love, Hudson.
Ms. Brick. The 4 others, you may all approach. I will also note that there are a handful, not a handful, because you can't hold, well, I guess you can hold them in 2 hands. There are a series of photographs that are propped up that show the victim and family members. And I see those.
There are actually 5.
5, all right.
No, 5 people to talk.
Oh, okay, all right. That's all right, folks. When you come up, I'm just going to ask you to state and spell your last name. Or actually, I might have to have you spell the first one. Just go ahead, ma'am. Your name?
I'm Melanie Kalish, Kalisz. I'm Steve, one of Steve's daughters.
Melanie again, is it? Spell that one too.
Melanie.
Whenever you're ready, ma'am. Take your time.
Thank you. My dad and I were kindred spirits. We shared an affinity for music, cute pets, and commiserating over things like property taxes and yard work. My dad, besides being everything a great parent embodies, was also becoming a true friend of mine. The way parents and children can sometimes become great friends as they become older together with much time. My dad was a gentle soul too. The night he was going to pick up birdseed to feed his birds so they wouldn't starve during the cold snap we were having. He was making sure the car was secure and ready to go for an upcoming trip my mom was about to take with their daughter-in-law and grandkids. And he was likely looking forward to getting home to visit with my brother, who was in town helping him stock up on firewood. My mom had just made meatloaf that night in anticipation of his return, and it was still warm when she and my brother started getting worried that he wasn't answering his calls, and eventually left to go out to look for him. That night, my dad was taken from me prematurely. That night, I lost the joy of not having that one person you default to call to share a funny story with. I lost a confidant. I lost the bravest person I know who would fight for me and always protect me. I've lost one of the persons who made me who I am and who was always proud of me. I was looking forward to sharing so much with my dad. It's still unfathomable to me that he is not here, and I will not get to share anything ever again with him. Nor will he be here to see me through some major upcoming milestones I still have. Losing such a significant figure in my life in such a violent, abrupt, and traumatic way has broken not only my heart, but my sense of safety and security. It has also devastated my sense of home and the community which I called home. I have been left permanently asking these questions. How did this happen on the streets of my small and seemingly safe hometown? How did this happen to someone who has driven these streets safely for the past 40+ years? How did this happen to the one person who always worried about my safety, who I relied upon to always protect me? How did this happen to my dad? Who else will this inevitably happen to? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, your first and last name, spell them both just to make sure we get them correctly spelled.
Matthew Kalish, Matthew Kalisz.
Yes, sir.
Death of my father has had a profound impact on my family, myself. I doubt my ability to put our loss into words. He was completely dedicated to his family. He was gentle, kind, insightful. Taught me more than any other person about how to live with purpose and how to persevere in challenging times. Those who knew him are better for it. Unfortunately, I have too many memories of this type of scenario in my professional life as a physician. I remember too many families destroyed by negligence and indifference behind the wheel. I'm tired of seeing good people killed and families broken. I ask for the maximum sentence in this case. This will do nothing for our loss. However, this community will be safer the longer this person is in prison. Thank you.
Your name, sir?
My name is Mike Schuler. I'm a son-in-law.
All right, sir. Spell Schuler if you would, please.
Mikeschule.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm the son-in-law of Steve, married to his daughter Katie. We have 3 kids: Maeve, 16, Huck is 14, and Hudson is 12. I lost my father before I became a father. So while I had an idea what this would be like, Steve showed me how to do this. His loving and dedicated relationship with his wife, Bev. They danced, they traveled, they walked the woods of Michigan, the mountains of Tennessee. They laughed all the time. Steve has 3 amazing children and successful: Melanie, Matt, and my wife, Katie. They're close. I saw how much Steve was a part of their lives. He would call them all the time. He'd meet them for lunches, hunting with his son. Where Steve really excelled was being a grandfather. He would come down to Grand Rapids to watch all the activities of our children: softball and baseball games, football, elementary, junior high, and high school music recitals, wax museum reports for all the kids in 5th grade. He was there for all of it. Afterwards, we'd get pizza, sit around the kitchen table laughing, goofing around in the front yard, playing catch with his grandchildren. I think he was overjoyed to spend time with his family. He would grill at the cabin. We would all travel together as a family. That picture right there is the first family trip without him. He taught my kids how to hunt, safely shoot a gun, aim an arrow, fish in the streams around this area. Tell my kids what they need to know to be a good steward of the land, how to be a loyal Michigan fan. This was perhaps the only time I ever saw him anger, was when Michigan would lose the lead in the last few minutes of the game. And yet, my son says, after he had so much to teach me. I think my son says what many of us feel. He wrote a letter to my son. And in it, he says, and I think it's important to say these are Steve's words. The best lessons in life and later true joys come from sticking with something. Even though it might be hard now, it will become better once you have conquered the thought of hard work and realize all the positive and wonderful things that come with just doing it. It will make you a better man, knowing you can take on anything. That's from Steve. He was a true Renaissance man, an avid reader, an intellectual, a woodsman, a hard worker, but most of all, he was a family man, an ideal family man. And while I'm so grateful to have known him, to have learned from him, the breadth and depth of this loss is greater than I have ever known. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Katie Kalish, Katidie Kalisc, and I'm Steve's other daughter. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today, Your Honor. It seems impossible to explain the impact that this crime has had on my family and on me, but I will try. Especially difficult for me to deal with has been the sudden and violent nature of my dad's death. He was such a dependent and careful man, and the way he died was the opposite. We were not able to see his body because of the violent accident. We were not able to say goodbye. We were not able to honor his choice to be laid out in a casket because of the violent crash. I must change how I drive and how I live in the world. 2 months after the crash, my oldest of 3 children turned 16 and got her license. As you can imagine, what would have been an exciting day was overshadowed by my dad's violent death due to a reckless driver. Each day I work to keep my anxiety in check as my daughter drives away from our house on her way to practice or to school. I drive myself each day. I have to overcome my own fears about what could happen, how it would feel to be broadsided by another car running a stop sign at a high speed. I've been in grief counseling for the past 5 months to help work through these fears, anxieties, and the sudden loss of my dad, someone I looked up to and relied on throughout my life. That counseling doesn't ease the big hole that has been left in my world. All the times I would call my dad to ask about a plant or a tree, or to share a story about one of the kids, or to tell him I loved him. Dad, a great man who made the world a better place in so many ways, was killed suddenly and violently, and I miss him like crazy. My own sense of safety is also. My dad's absence is everywhere. In spring and summer, he would be with my family several days each week to watch my daughter and 2 sons play softball and baseball. He was often on the sidelines for fall football. Last fall, my sons were learning to hunt with him. It is one of the many things that he and they will miss out on because of his sudden death. While all of my children loved his company and looked forward to time with him, my youngest son, 12-year-old Hudson, had a special bond with him. The impact on Hudson has been especially difficult for me to see. How do I explain to him why this happened? How do I reassure him that we are still safe when we drive, when his big sister drives? Hudson had already chosen my dad to be his sponsor in the Catholic Church when he will be confirmed 2 years from now. is just one more thing that we will all miss. Another future date when we will mourn his absence and wonder why. It is awful to see my happy, kind-hearted son crying alone in his room as he tries to navigate this loss. Like me, Hudson is a grief counselor. When I first heard about the accident, I thought the other driver had made a horrible mistake, and I felt bad for her. After learning more, however, it's clear that she was reckless and has a history of disregarding laws meant to keep people safe. I ask you to please exceed the recommended sentence so that your own family does not have to experience this kind of senseless loss.
Ma'am,
The priest can just stand by me, please.
of course, ma'am.
Father,
I understand, ma'am.
my name is Beverly Collins. It's Beverly Kalisz, and I'm Steve's wife for 50 years, almost 50 years. We would have celebrated our 50th anniversary on June 20th of this year. He's a partner, my confidant, the one person who always had my back, loyalty. Someone once asked, well, how did you know he was the one? And after thinking about it, I said, when we were together, I was home. I always felt like at home. And through many moves and difficulties, if we were together, we were home, and that got us through. I'm here and I want to, because how this impacted me as a victim, but I'm also here and I want to speak for Steve because I know he's not able to, and what was taken away from him. So please allow me a few extra moments.
Okay, ma'am, take your time.
Steve was robust and health conscious. Pete, would you hold that picture up, the first one up? We have a wood boiler. And Steve, all the wood that we used to heat our home for decades. We never had wood delivered. He would bring it home. He felled a tree and cut it himself, chop, and then split it for putting it in another bit. He took care of himself, and he had good DNA, good genes. His father lived to 93 years old, and Steve wanted to beat his dad, and he worked at it. He wanted another 20 years. He kept himself active. He lifted weights almost every day. He rode bikes. He walked miles hiking, but also he was a forester, and so he walked an unimproved ground in many clients' woodlots and hundreds of acres, carrying a pack with his instruments and paint to mark trees for a timber sale, and a camera and a thermos, all through hot summers, cold winters. One item on Steve's bucket list, and mine too, was to live long enough to see our grandkids reach adulthood, which is maybe an unusual item to have on a bucket list, but we wanted to know them as adults. I want to tell you how his tragic death by this habitual offender shattered his dream, and how her actions impact one person in our family, and why it breaks my heart. First, let me just tell you this background. Steve never knew his grandfather. His maternal grandfather was killed in a car crash weeks before he was born. His paternal grandfather was killed in a Nazi concentration camp in Poland. He wasn't Jewish, but he was a chemist and a pacifist. And he wasn't willing to help the German war effort. He never made it.
out of there. Now, Steve loved being a father. It was considered it his fulfilling his purpose in life. Grandfather was the role he cherished, and he strove to be grandfather he always wanted. He felt the role of patriarch of his family to his core, and he knew how important his influence could be and was in the lives of his 6 grandchildren. He established those connections from the day they were born through holidays, birthdays, as Mike said, swim meets, church vacations. Taught them how to tie a spinner on a fishing pole and how to make a bonfire. He loved being an influencer to his grandkids.
Ever.
He
It's
loved
okay.
to laugh, and he especially loved laughing with Hudson, who always chose the seat next to Papa. Because Steve never knew his grandfather, he made it his mission to be there for them and available. Now, the older grandkids, 16 through 9, they'll have memories to share. But Oscar was 3 years old when Steve was. He didn't have any grandfather in his life. Steve was the only grandfather he knew. And he only has pictures that we've taken. He'll never know the strength and tenderness and love of his grandfather. It's one example of how an irresponsible criminal act destroyed our lives and shattered Steve's dream. He was a hard worker, had a work ethic like no other, and he was a dedicated family man. Now I'm heating with fuel oil because I can't keep the wood boiler going, not during 90 degrees. Understand? In February, I tried to keep the wood boiler and I just couldn't get going. My freezer, I still have some of the, 1 duck and about 2 pheasants from Steve's North Dakota hunt with his son. And I still have a few trout from last summer. I long for the time when we prepared these wild game dinners together. He was a good provider, and we lived simply and cleanly. He was a hunter, an environmentalist, a wonderful provider. He didn't eat up often, and especially since COVID, hardly ever. Now when I go to the grocery store and have to buy meat, I'm just in shock. In the mornings, Steve always brought me coffee. He knew I liked to sleep in. He was a tender-hearted, big teddy bear. Before I even got to say good morning, my steaming hot cup of coffee was by my bed. And he knew I felt better when I ate a wholesome breakfast. So his routine was to wake up, put on a pot of water, make oatmeal for me. He'd boil the water, put in a half cup of oats, and then cut up either an apple or blueberry, or put blueberries in it. And he'd get one of my pictures from the shelf collection, filled with milk. He would put it in front of me and then put a big tablespoon of flaxseed, because he knew that would also help. I now try to eat something in the morning and get my own coffee. I'm existing, and I am waking, and I'm walking, and I'm watching, and I'm breathing, so I don't cry myself to death. When I visited family out of state, and sometimes I'd be gone 10 days, when I came home, Steve always had a flower on the table for me, and he'd have my favorite foods like a yogurt cup lay in the fridge, and I like grapefruit cut up. And he always had surprises. Sometimes it's coconut ice cream or a cheese Danish in the fridge. I'd walk in and the candles would be lit, and it was mostly because he was taking care of the cat and the dog, and the smell in the house probably was permeating. But he always made it special, and now coming home is one of the hardest times for me. Our favorite time of day was after dinner, getting ready for bed. It was our time, and there were no interruptions, no distractions or phone calls. Just us in the quiet, listening to music mostly, and often dancing in the dining room. When I went to bed, my feet were always cold, and I would always tuck them under Steve.
That make him mad makes my wife mad.
He never once pushed me away in 50 years. Really close, massage my legs. I try now an extra blanket and heating pad. I tried foot massager, and it just makes me miss Steve. Seeing the loss of my kids, my grandkids, is unbearable. And seeing their concern for me, the sorrow in their eyes, it's traumatic. Not being able to say goodbye or I love you. Repeated each and every day, it's trauma by dozens of moments he's missing, and we're missing him. Home was where we were together, and now no one feels at home. And nowhere feels safe or secure. He was my security. I was in college in the mid-60s when a serial killer was on the campus of Eastern Michigan in the Ipsy area, and 7 co-eds were killed. I lost my sense of security at that time. It was a traumatic event. There wasn't counseling available. There were no security cameras or anything. Steve always made me feel safe. And now I'm reliving that fear. I am in the driveway and I'm afraid to go from my car to the house. It's dark out and I don't want to go outside. It's brought up a whole nother level of fear. I sleep with the bedroom door locked and bear spray on my Judge Elmore, I ask you, keep me and my family, keep your family safe by keeping this habitual offender incarcerated for the maximum time allowable. I know the legislature limits you, but we ask you because of her priors. Would she have been in jail if she wouldn't have pled earlier? Would we still have my husband beside her? You alone can provide justice for Steve by keeping her in jail for the maximum time. Steve didn't deserve to be, he should be right here. Finally, I want you to know that how this has impacted me everywhere I go and everywhere I am. I just don't feel like I belong. Everything feels different. I'm not lonely. It feels like I need to leave, to go. I just keep moving. I'm a stranger in my own home, in my own bed. I feel desperate at times trying to settle in, and I realize I'm just terribly homesick. I'll never. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And thank you for the support.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Harry, allocution.
You usually start with the defense.
Oh, well, I was just going to start with you since I've just moved left to right. I can start with Mr. Hartel. Mr. Hartel, why don't you take the next swing?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to start by thanking everyone who testified today for coming in to say what they had to say for the impacts. I do think it's appropriate to say that. I do want the court to know that I have seen the weight of that on my client while she's been sitting here listening to it. She's very aware, and I know it doesn't take away from anyone's pain, but she does feel disappointed. This is a no contest plea, obviously, so I'm going to have to limit a lot of what I allocute for obvious reasons. But I do thank our office social workers for doing the mitigation report. I do believe they did a well job, as they always do. I do thank the people who submitted letters of support for my client. I did look those over, and I know that they do wish her the best as well. I know her, at least at one point, her son and a few other people were in the courtroom. They may have stepped out because he's young and making some sounds. Oh, well, if they're still there. But trying to show respect to the court is what I'm trying to say.
It's okay.
I've been told that there are expected to be other people watching, not interacting on Zoom, but remotely, who are in support of her as well. People who wrote the letters and others. I would ask the court to factor in, and I'm not trying to take away from anything when I say this, but I have had a lot of time both to think about the situation, reading the report, talk to my client, and not going to anything protected by privilege, that again, this was no contest. But I would ask the court to factor in that the word accident was used multiple times per day, and that's a legitimate way to describe it. We're not trying to take away from the harm or the legality of it, but this was something that was an accident. My client did not intend to harm anyone, and I stress all those qualifiers. For what it is worth, a lot of times, even in district court cases, I'll just use the phrase, but for the grace of God, they could have been in the exact same situation. A lot of people don't realize that with prescription drugs, those are still drugs. There's not some magic wand that just because the doctor put his initials on a piece of paper, make it a different chemical compound. A lot of people don't realize that when they're below the legal limit, like my client was, that interacting with those other chemicals can't lead to the results that we see here, these tragic situations. And I do hope some people are watching this and learning preemptively from this and can take something away from it. I do hope some productive things do come from this tragedy. And it is a tragedy, not just for everyone who testified and for all those who didn't, but also for my client's family, because they know that she's going to have to go away for quite some time. I would ask the court to consider sentencing on the lower end of the guideline. She's realistic. She knows she's not going home anytime soon. She knows she's going to prison. When I was reading the PSI with her, rightfully so, the author did write in there that she is technically eligible for boot camp if the sentence was 3 years or less. I realize the guidelines go significantly above that, but I would ask the court just to factor that in for whatever way the court feels appropriate to factor that in. Your Honor, again, I know this is no contest, so I don't want to go too much or ramble on, but I really do want the court to know that my client a few different times offered to go into great detailed statements to the court. And although she may make a very limited statement here in a minute, I do want the court to know that there is a reason why she's edited her statements. I would also like to point out to the court that she has been using her time productively in the jail. She has been attending AA, talking to Catholic Human Services. She has provided proofs. I didn't show them to the prosecutor yet. I don't know if the court wants me to do that, present them to the court formally.
I'll accept that she's, because there was reference that she had seen Catholic Human Services for a while. It was inside the PSI.
As well as community mental health.
Sure.
She does realize she has a long road ahead of her. She's gone through a lot in her life, not to try to make excuses, just explanations. And sometimes situations like this make her realize just how much more she needs to do. I do realize that some of the impact statements were regarding the hope that something like this never happens again, and I hope the same thing. I do believe that if given the opportunity on the lower end of the guidelines, if really hypothetically she were able to do something like boot camp, which is set up to help people get the skills they need to help make sure these things don't happen again. Purely hypothetically, I don't doubt that that would be unwasted upon her as well. We fully just ask the court to factor in everything. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Carey, on behalf of the people.
Thank you. So I certainly can't do better than Mr. Collish's family, and I really appreciate that they came. And I think I haven't seen a courtroom this full for sentencing, I think, ever. So I think that speaks volumes as to the support they have and the type of person that Mr. College was and what was taken from them. February 7th of this year, the defendant ended the life of Mr. College. It was avoidable, it was unnecessary, it was violent, and it was life-changing for his family. It was not an accident or mistake. It was a sudden and violent crash for Mr. College because the defendant consumed alcohol on top of taking, including a sedative. She then got in her vehicle, got on the phone with her boyfriend, and was driving down the road and blew through that stop sign at 63 miles an hour. This is just before 6 p.m. We're all from here. We know what a busy, well-traveled, dangerous area that is. And reading the mitigation report and the attached letters provided by the defense, many things stood out to me. In that report, the defense writes, the defendant came from an unstable, unsafe, and abusive environment at the hands of her mom, stepdad, and dad, and that there were mental health issues and violence and drugs. Yet when she talks about her support system, it is made up of many of those same people, without any indication that they have received help or rehabilitation or changed in any way. Doesn't indicate whether she, other than the limited CMH involvement or help she's gotten in jail, in this case, is the only thing mentioned for her. It states she has 6 children. The PSI has reported she has given up her rights and or did not have custody of 5 of them, some of whom are adults now. The defense report mentions a diagnoses, including post-traumatic stress, anxiety, ADHD, borderline personality, manic depression, and a mood disorder. It mentions them, but does not provide any support to show that she has actually been diagnosed with those conditions, nor did she provide any support that I saw to the Department of Corrections for those alleged conditions, nor does it provide or state what she's done to address those, other than while she's been in jail on a limited basis. And in the PSI, where it talks about treatment, that section is blank. Defense asked that the defendant not be seen as the product of her trauma, but as a person who survived and is trying to rise above. I would argue that her record suggests otherwise. She's not been trying to rise above. She has 18 criminal entries on her criminal history beginning in 2003. Her behavior prior to February 7th, on February 7th, and since February 7th indicate the opposite. We'll note that she is not from Cadillac, nor is she from Wexford County. She was here visiting her 16-year-old boyfriend, even though she had a 2-year-old son and a husband at home. She was drinking and taking medication, arguing with her 16-year-old boyfriend, and then she decided to get behind the wheel and called him and got on the phone with him. Through that stop sign at 63 miles an hour, ending the life of Mr. College and shattering the lives, as you have heard, of his family. One of the letters in support of the defendant said they were proud of her for not leaving the scene of the accident. I'd like to point out, as it states in the police report, she couldn't leave. She was trapped in the car. She hit Mr. Collish's car with so much force. They were both trapped inside of their vehicles. Another of the letters in support asks that you not judge her based on her past. Well, I would argue we do get to consider her history. We do get to consider the 18 convictions. We do get to consider, and most importantly, we get to consider the facts and circumstances of her actions in this case, which is described were inexcusable, avoidable, and unnecessary. The court does get to consider her actions of driving while intoxicated and taking the life of a man who was clearly active and loved and a large part of his family and a large part of his community, as evidenced by the people in this courtroom today. He was deeply loved and is dearly missed by his family and friends. On top of her actions on February 7th, questioned by the police, her boyfriend reported at the time of the accident, the defendant told him she only had one drink, told him to report that she only had one drink, but he said he wanted to be honest and reported that she had 2 tall cans of twisted tea, and he crushed them when she asked him to. We get to look at her actions after February 7th. So at least until July 7th of this year, she was still in contact with this boyfriend who is now. On July 7th, after her pre-sentence interview, she called him, excited that her sentencing guidelines were lower than she expected, believing she would be out in about 3 years. The sentencing was not impressed, and she told him he would be begging her to come back to him, that nobody would love him like she would. Yet in the PSI, she told the Department of Corrections she believed she and her husband would be able to work things out. The 17-year-old asked her why she kept running back to him. She said her good heart made her fall in love with him. He was still not swayed. And then the defendant told the that he was just as much at fault for this crash as she was, because he was on the phone with her and because she left his house. She told him she talked to her lawyer and he could be charged too. And then she yells at him for snitching her out when he talked to the police. Even before that, on February 8th, one day after the crash, defendant had a phone call with the 16-year-old boyfriend, and she learned that Mr. Kalish was 74 years old. And she says in that recorded phone call, that's why he ended up, and excuse my language, this is not me speaking. She said that's why he ended up, because he was so old. And then she continues, maybe if it was a younger person, they would have lived and I wouldn't be in here. I would have gotten out already. I would just had an OWI and sat for 24 hours. That is the type of person that the defendant is. And while the mitigation report tries to paint a picture of someone overcoming a rough life, her own words and her own actions show us who she is. She is only concerned about herself and for what she has done. There is no evidence that she has taken steps to make a better life or better choices for herself in the 22 years that she has been having contact with law enforcement. Criminal history goes back to 2003 and includes 16 prior misdemeanor convictions and 2 prior felony convictions. She has out-of-state convictions, including domestic violence, common law uttering, intoxicated and disruptive, breaking and entering with force. In Michigan, her convictions include retail fraud 3rd degree, 2 retail fraud 2nd degrees, trespass, domestic violence, malicious use of a telecommunication device, for which she was unsuccessfully discharged from probation. Then has 2 domestic violence seconds convictions, 1 with an unsuccessful discharge from probation. In 2017, she was convicted of resisting and obstructing a police officer and domestic violence. She was placed on probation and then had probation revoked and a prison sentence was imposed. Also in 2017, she received a malicious destruction of property while on probation. In 2019, possession of, and in 2021, operating while visibly impaired. In 2022, retail fraud 2nd, and then in 2025, here we are. Your Honor, given the circumstances of this case, the irreversible damage caused by defendant's behavior, defendant's continued poor behavior, her history, the wishes of Mr. Kalish's family, the people respectfully request the court to find grounds to exceed the guidelines and sentence defendant to 15 years in prison, which is 2/3 of the maximum. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Carl, we're at that point, and I do respect and understand the under no contest plea. Mr. Hartel covered that very thoroughly and very appropriately. So I respect the fact that the law allows an individual in this instance to enter a no contest plea. Whether or not people like it, some people want to hear an apology. The law says that you have that right. Therefore, I can't take anything away from it. I won't. Is there anything you wish to say at this time? You may remain seated. It's all right. Whatever makes you the most comfortable, you may talk right now. Thank you, ma'am.
I would like to address a couple of things that the prosecutor said. Would that be all right?
Yes, you may, ma'am.
First of all, my husband is actually in the courtroom, and we have been working things out. He is here to support me, and he's right there in the black in the back, right there.
I saw him. He's the one that had a little kid in there.
Yes, that's my 2-year-old son. I actually gave the probation office all my records for my mental disorders and all the treatment I had. They failed to get the information. I was there with my lawyer when I did it. I gave him Gresham Integrated, which I've worked with successful. I was on disability for my mental disorders.
I'm going to tell you that inside the police report, which I used to take the no contest plea, there was a list of your MAPS, which is your medical record.
Yes, sir.
And it talks about your medications. I know you were seeing a family nurse practitioner
Yes,
down
sir.
in Ithaca and another doctor. I can't remember his name, but I looked it up and I see that you had prescribed medications for certain matters.
Yep, and Gresham Integrated Network is the mental health down there. And that's where I've been seen, and I've seen them all since I got out of prison the last time. I've taken very well care of myself for my mental disorders. I went to DBT for my borderline. I've done DBT twice. And I've seen a psychiatrist and psychologist, and the whole time I was in the clinic, I seen a therapist there. It was required once a month, and the whole time I went there, and I did drug testing. And with my charge, I wanted to bring up the fact that I did OCC when I got arrested. I never tested positive, and I did OCC, successfully completed that, and I never tested positive. So it was, yeah, bless you. I wanted to bring that up, reiterate that. So I've been clean off drugs for a long time. The only thing that I was doing was my prescription medication, which as you see by the lab report, I took them as prescribed. And that day I mean, I know it's a no contest, but I wasn't using them. And I can't really go into things, but there's a whole family here, and I just want to say I'm not from this area, and I don't know the roads. And I don't want them to think because I have a black and white criminal history that I'm a bad person, because I haven't gotten in trouble for over 4 years. Since I got married, I've been doing good. I have a son, and we had a rocky time, and that's what ended me up here. And I've been trying to work things out with my husband, but I never intended to go out that day and actually hurt somebody. I'm not a bad person. Just because people have criminal histories and done things bad in their life and come from bad backgrounds doesn't mean they're bad people. And I feel like if someone wants to paint me as a bad person, people grow up bad. People have bad backgrounds, but it doesn't mean that's how they have to be. I can't sit here and explain to someone who's doing a mitigation report. We'd have been in there for 5 days, Your Honor, if I had to explain to them the help that my mother got or somebody else. I don't have all that time.
Mr. Hartel and his office provided the mitigation report, and their social worker did a very thorough job explaining all that. So while it's not all spoken out loud, I have read that.
Prosecutor did say that I put in anybody else getting help or anybody else. My mom's a devout Christian now, and she has changed, and it wasn't her at the hands that hurt me. It was certain men, but I can't sit here and go in detail over a phone in a booth, everything in my life. Didn't really have time to do all that. It's kind of hard to keep my brain and focus, Your Honor.
Mr. Hartel and his office covered quite a bit of that. I did review, so I understand.
But I just prepared a short statement, but I honestly, in my heart, I feel, no words can probably settle the hearts of, I don't know how to pronounce their last name, but, the victim's family. Cause I just, yeah. But it says, Judge, I've had a lot of time to think about everything. And I can't go into too much detail because of my no contest plea. But I read the 2 victim impact statements that came with my packet. And if I could, I would definitely undo what happened on February 7th. And I would take his place. And I can't really say much, but there's a lot that goes on in my head that I can't really talk about. But I wish that it never happened. And I had actually said to a sergeant the other day, I said, do you think the family would want me dead? And he's like, because you said, even if you tell them that you're sorry, they're not going to believe it anyway, because if it was my family, they wouldn't care anyway. He wouldn't care anyway. So I don't think any apology I give them that they're going to believe me, because they already have their mindset on how they feel about me.
I want to cut you off. Is that Carl?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, folks, we're now at the point in time where I have sat here very quietly, and it's now my turn to talk. Now, while I try to plan some things to say, the best laid speech always goes out the window by the time I get here. So please bear with me as I try to popcorn around. I have to cover a lot of things. First of all, I think most of you all will agree with this. There's only ever been one perfect person to walk this earth. None of us are. Try to keep that in mind the best we can. In life, we deal with negative all the time. We deal with challenges, pain, loss. We probably have all faced that question, either ourselves, well, most likely ourselves, and then whenever we're talking to our children and our grandchildren. How does God let bad things happen? I don't know what they do. I think it's unfortunately part of just life on earth with human beings. There are people who do really bad, evil things. There are people who do really stupid things. There are good people. There are mean people. It's just the way life is. But the blessing that we have, if we believe that this is just part of life. And Steve isn't necessarily gone entirely. He lives in his family, his friends, his grandchildren. He lives in their hearts and their memories. And we presume he's watching us now. Next thing I take away from this is I sit in the neutral position. There are things probably happen in the lives of every single person here in this courtroom right this minute, besides this tragedy, that we don't always know about. I don't know if the victims' families have read everything that's been involved in Miss Carl's life. None of that negates the action stuff and the impact. Don't think that. I'm just trying to say that if Christ's life ever had any meaning, it was about love. And I'm going to tell you the greatest challenge that I can find of love is forgiveness. Maybe it's too hard now. That's okay. Maybe someday you'll find it. Maybe you'll find it in going to church. Maybe you'll find it in prayer. Maybe you'll find it in reading the Bible. Maybe it'll hit you tomorrow. Maybe it'll hit you in 10 years. I don't know. But I don't think anyone in here is that bad of a person that there isn't going to be that consideration at some time. Again, that doesn't make the pain go away. The pain is still real. Miss Carl, I know you've had a very difficult life. One of the words I generally come up with a theme word. It's not that I look for it, but there's always one that just rings out. And the one that I came up here is home. I heard a lot about home from Steve's family today. I heard about family. I also thought of the word Werther's Originals, because I just felt like I knew Steve, like he would give me a Werther's Original news here, because he sounds like that kind of grandpa. I hear a lot about love. I hear a lot about family. I could taste the chocolate chip cookies almost. Granted, I didn't have much of a lunch today. I heard from Melanie how he was the default go-to person that she would turn to, and that she missed being an adult and growing old with her dad. I'm kind of getting that phase. I'm about to be an empty nester in a few weeks, and I'm looking forward to that time when I start to talk to my kids as adults. That's an important stage. I heard how Matt talked about how dedicated Steve was to his family, how he found him to be gentle, kind, and insightful, and how he talked about living with a purpose. And some of us don't figure that out for a long time in our lives. Heard Mike talk about how he lost his father and how Steve was his default father, if I'm going to use Melanie's words. How he excelled as a grandpa, did all those things, the kid events, the recitals. I can imagine doing all those. Now, I have 2 kids that go to U of M, so good job, Steve, for cheering for the right team. And I'm not going to get the quote right, but I do remember that it had to do with the best lessons of life and the true joys of life come through what you put out, what work you do in life, and how what you put out into the world. And I also, of course, heard from Katie, and the one thing that stuck with me is she explained how they never got to see Dad. And that's impactful. And Beverly, well, I could talk for probably as long as she did to pick out all the things that she talked about. And Beverly, that's okay. All right. But I did like that question. How did you know he was the one? Because he made you feel. And my key phrase for the day was home. And that's what I took from what everybody had to say today. So Beverly, and I also saw you serving as the rock to all the kids. You stood behind them, you put your hand on them. Well, I think Steve was probably the rock, and now it's you. By the way, try overnight oats, a cup of oatmeal, a cup of milk, put it in the refrigerator. It'll be ready for you in the morning, and a little scoop of maple syrup. That's what I do. All right. And at the same time, Ms. Carl, I read about the abuse. And I'm not going to talk about it too much here because I don't want to get into the details. It's easy to look at somebody superficially and look at just the black and white. And you used that phrase, black and white, a couple minutes ago. I don't do that. I look at it. I made notes about it as I was reading. You know, sometimes I had a little argument or a little comment here, but what I took from it was you've had a very difficult life. From mom, dad, mom's boyfriends, personal abuse upon you, access to drugs and alcohol. And I can only imagine how much that impacted you because they were in your life even well before you were 25 years of age, where we all are told nowadays that's the age which your brain is starting to be fully developed. You were dealing with this from the earliest of ages. So I want you to know that I hear that, I read that, and I see it. At the same time, I now have to look at the events. And Katie, I'm glad you did see your dad. I have seen it, and it's hard. But that's not what face I see now. The face I see now are those pictures. In this instance, Ms. Carl had multiple items in her substance, in her body. She had a little bit of alcohol, it was about a 0.40, but mixed with it, she had which was the high She had at least two, from what I could see, two Schedule 4 controlled substances in addition to Schedule 2. And I do often hear people say, but it's on prescription. So, just like saying, well, alcohol is legal, but it doesn't mean you can drive if you're, well, with controlled substances, it's in your system, and when you start mixing alcohol with it, it's a recipe for an auto accident. I know this intersection very well. I grew up 1.5 miles away. I bike a lot. I bike through that intersection all the time. I used to run around that square block mile all the time in high school. So I've literally crossed that intersection no less than 2,000 times. So I can see, I can even see the tree. I know exactly which one it is that his vehicle came up to rest against. I know the speed limit. She was exceeding the speed limit, which is another reason why I noted that it's wanton and reckless, because I know that there was no braking until she collided with the car. That's because it was more than just what an ordinary person might make a mistake. It was wanton and reckless. And then when she was asked by law enforcement, she said that she didn't have the stop sign, and maybe the other guy did, or maybe he didn't. And she was in an argument with her boyfriend. When I look at some of this stuff, it's clear she's had a difficult life, and she's had a difficult time fixing it. Even though she's got married and has a kid, she'd been dating this young kid for a couple months. And I know the young kid knew about it, and so did the husband, because they were recording phone calls, and I read all the transcripts of those phone calls. They were in People's Exhibit number 1. Oh, I know she was telling David to go talk to Justin, and Justin would come back or messages through David. I know she told David to lie about the amount of alcohol and to crush the cans. I know she was trying to involve this 16-year-old kid in her cover-up. It was just a little bit of a cover-up because she'd already been caught. You know, in fact, David, she did say something to the effect of, beforehand, according to David, I'm just going to end it all. And then he had to tell her, well, you've got to think about your son. And there was something he said right after that that was quoted in the report. It said, quote, because normally, and that normally works to calm her down and remind her she has something to live for. That word normally should be the word that stuck out. This kid knew enough from dating her for just a brief period of time that she was already mentally not doing well, because he would normally, which means more than once, have to remind her that she should have something to live for. So I think when she left that house that evening, she was not in the right mind, and she was definitely off the deep end and under the influences of alcohol and controlled substances. I know she's from St. Louis, Michigan. She's not from here. Again, I've already talked about the control of substances. And there is one other thing. I'm sorry, well, there's more. I need to cover the injuries. The victim suffered blunt force trauma to the head that included cranial fractures, lacerations, bleeding within multiple layers underneath the skin, between the skin and the skull, and from underneath the skull surrounding the brain. He had bleeding that creates dark circles around the eyes, because it was already coming from the brain and into his area of his eyes. He had a laceration of the tongue. He had a blunt force injury to the neck that fractured one of his cervical spines. He had bleeding and other cuts along the neck. He had at least, I think, a broken rib or more than one broken ribs with bleeding inside. And there was much more to it. And I'll tell you, there's the one thing that struck me the most. And I gotta wonder, because I hear people make stupid comments all the time. And I often think it's because they can't deal with what they've just done, or it's the self-defensiveness. But I'm gonna tell you, it rings very well in my head. Miss Carey gave a quote, and she did. I already had written down that quote. It's not just once. She actually said it a couple times over the next couple of days in talking to David, who she professed her love to, and they both said that they would wait until she got out. Well, maybe if it was a younger person, they would have lived and I wouldn't effing be in here. I would have gotten out already. I would have just had an OWI and sat for 24 hours and sobered up. Next time. That's why he didn't live, because he was so old. And then on those phone calls, repetitively, Ms. Carl expressed her worry. And one of the things she worried about when talking to young David is how she was being portrayed on TV in the news. David would tell her that, well, it was, they're saying it's a DUI. And then she would yell or get in the phone and say, well, that's effing untrue. Those cops are effing liars. Because it wasn't just for alcohol. The actions, oh, and then even at the scene, there was a comment, a statement that she didn't have enough to drink, so therefore nothing should really happen to her. This is a tragedy all around. Miss Carl, I also need to talk a little bit about, hold on. I do have to comment on one thing. Maybe the math is wrong. I'm going to say it out loud so the prosecutor can correct me. I can't give her 15 years. That's too high. I can only give her 160 months. 180 months, I think, would exceed the 2/3. So you can quickly do math. Take the 242 months divided by 3 and times that by 2. Tell me how much I get. Divide. So that should be what, 86? No, not that. It should be about 80 months, which would be 160 months.
She pled as a habitual offender second.
Yeah, the max goes, yeah, but the max isn't the max 242 months. Mr.
270.
No, I'm sorry. I thought I've lost my
Should be
PSI.
270.
Okay, well then, sorry, then the PSI,
Should just say 22. Let me double check.
yes, you are right. Thank you very much for correcting me. Like I said earlier, I should not be allowed to do math. All right, thank you. But what I also want to say is whenever the judge is asked to exceed the guidelines, and the guidelines in this case are 58 to 142 months. Pursuant to MCL 769.34, subsection 3, the court cannot use things that are already taken into consideration in scoring the guidelines. So I can't consider the death, that is already included. I can't consider her prior convictions. Those are already used to calculate the guidelines. The conduct afterwards, if he had only been younger, he may have lived and I wouldn't be in this mess. Doesn't go over well with this court. She asked her boyfriend to lie, but that was already taken into consideration by offense variable number 19. There are other things. This defendant has not only had prior convictions, but in getting those prior convictions, she has also racked up probation violations. I'm going to go over her criminal history real briefly. Well, not briefly, quite thoroughly. It began in 2023, and she made it about 3 years before she picked up between a domestic violence and a forgery. And then she made it about 3 more years before she picked up another offense. Then she made it about 7 months between that and picking up her 4th. We don't know what happened to number 5. Then we get number 6. Number 6 was resolved on April 14th, 2014. And she made it 1 day before picking up the next crime. Then after that was resolved, she made it 2 months. And they're back-to-back retail frauds. And after that, 2014, she made it another 2 months. In fact, she'd only been on probation for 2 months before she violated her probation. Then after that, she made it about a year before she picked up another offense. Then she made it about another year before she picked up another offense. Then in 2016, she picked up yet another act of domestic violence, which is one of the most common offenses. And she was on probation, and she made it 4 months on probation before violating and doing exactly the same act of domestic violence. Then between that one, 13 and 14, she made it 1 month before picking up yet another charge. So it's not so much the fact that she's got repetitive criminal convictions. It's that they're of the same nature, they overlap, they happen in quick succession, and she violates probation often. In fact, between 15 and 16 of 18, she had another probation violation. That's where she had her first drinking and driving, as I understand it. She did make it about 2 years before she picked up another retail fraud, which is one of the other popular crimes. So she doesn't learn it's the same crimes. It's domestic violence and it is retail fraud, crimes of dishonesty. And then she did make it just about 2 years before picking up this offense. This one, because she can't learn her lessons and she's not getting the help that she should be getting. And one of them, I think she got a prison sentence. Yeah. Back in 2017, she had a prison sentence. Well, I'm wondering why I don't see and the one thing that might be missing is I don't know where if she got treatment at the prison. She should have, because I'm going to tell you there's one place where they don't have treatment mostly. It's typically in the county jails. We do get rehab for Catholic Human Services for substance use, and we do get a little bit of community and mental health treatment. We appreciate that. So it's not so much the criminal history, but it's the fact of how close it all is, the fact that it's often involves violations of probation, often that they'll occur within days or weeks or a month of each other. That is quite concerning to the court. That is not taken into consideration in the guidelines. Now, there is one thing I also take a little bit of question about. The legislature gives us the guidelines, and the guidelines are repetitively told that they are not mandatory, but there are other statutes that talk about how we're supposed to use them. But at the same time, it says where the characteristic has been given inadequate or disproportionate weight. It's that word, inadequate. I cannot fathom how the legislature puts value on a life and says that 50 points is adequate. I don't think it's adequate. Consider it because the law has already told me I can't. Therefore, I won't use that as adequate, but I will say that the guidelines don't take into consider probation violations and more. But I also have to balance every person. I also have to think about potentials for so I'm about to announce the court sentence. 1 second. But I will comment again. You know, I sometimes in a sentencing case, I might get nothing. I may not get victim impact statements. Today, I got some really heartfelt impact statements. Impact statements are taken into consideration when establishing the sentence. Tears are not taken into consideration when establishing the sentencing guidelines. The pain by multiple people, the impacts that ripple through a community. I do not understand how that can be adequately scored. Because I don't think they can. Regardless, I've got multiple issues here which I can consider, and I do. The sentence of the court is as follows, and I'm going to make this announcement, and I don't think I need to say this, but everybody please be calm toward one another, toward Miss Carl's family, to the friends and the family here. Thank you. The court sentences the defendant as follows. There's a $68 state minimum fee, $130 crime victim strike fund fee, a $300 court cost. I need to get that restitution. Restitution in the amount of $5,185.13. I'm going to strike that court cost. Thank you. All right, the court recognizes its discretion to sentence the defendant as a second habitual offender. The court does exercise that discretion and sentence her accordingly. The court sentences the defendant to the following sentence. Again, I've covered my justifications, and I find this sentence to be reasonable and proportionate. I'm going to exceed the guidelines by a bit based upon what I've established, but I'm also very considerate of any appellate issues. Therefore, the court sentences the defendant to a period in the Michigan Department of Corrections of 160 to 270 months with 174 days of credit. Again, that is outside the guidelines. I've covered my issues for my justification for exceeding the guidelines pursuant to the court statute that I referenced earlier. Madam Prosecutor, this is your Exhibit 1. Mr. Hartel, you're going to take Ms. Charles, 2 copies of 1 document. This document tells you, Ms. Charles, that you have the right to appeal the conviction and sentence in your case. That is typically done by filing a claim of right to appeal. However, based upon the plea in this case, any appeal must be done by filing an application for leave to appeal. Now, if you choose to file an application for leave to appeal and you want the court to appoint an attorney to assist you, you complete the bottom half and return to the court within 42 days. If you choose not to appeal, you may simply dispose of your copy of the document. Again, folks, I had to say a lot of things because I wanted to cover every side. Please know the court feels for both sets, both parties. Nothing I can say can bring it back or undo it. The only thing I can say is God bless you all.
Well, she deserved what she got. She is a menace. And the jail calls? Her husband was in the audience. He was listening to all the things she was saying to her special beau. She is a menace. That's all I can say. I don't know what else to say about her. I mean, she deserved exactly what she got. So anyway, that's all I was going to say because the judge pretty much laid it all out. And, she probably didn't shed a tear until he read the sentence, till he handed it down. That's when she first started to cry. Because, she's so self-centered. Everything is about her. She's the only one that matters in life. And, everybody needs to get out of her way. So, that's all I can say. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you another time.